For all of my projects today, I'm going to be using these wire wreath ring forms that you can find at the Dollar Tree. I've only been able to find these once, but I picked up 2 packs of them and I'm going to take them out to my garage to spray paint them using this Rust-Oleum antique brass color. I just didn't like the color that they came in, but they do sell other colors. I think they come in black, silver, and then this brass color. Next, I'm taking this reindeer that I also found at the Dollar Tree and I started painting it with my black chalk paint. However, I always find chalk paint to scratch off of surfaces like this pretty easily unless you seal it either after you're done painting in between coats, but put some type of sealer on it. And I just didn't want to go through all of that. So instead, I decided to spray paint it with my Rust-Oleum flat black spray paint. While I wait for all of my paint to dry, I'm taking this scrap piece of wood that I had laying around. It is 7 inches long, 1.5 inches wide, and 1 inch thick, and I'm going to find the center of my scrap piece of wood. Now, you do not have to use a scrap piece of wood if you don't have something like that for this step. You could use floral foam, you could use Jenga blocks. Dollar Tree also sells scrap wood right now, although you can get it much cheaper at the hardware store, but that's a story for another day. Point is, you can use other things if you do not have random scrap wood just lying around. I marked on my wood where the ring was going to sit at, and that's where I'm going to create a little slit in the wood. If you were using floral foam, you wouldn't need to do this step. You could just push that wreath ring down into the floral foam, glue it in place, and you're good to go. Or if you used Jenga blocks, you could just glue them on either side of the wreath ring to hold it in place as your base. I'm using a wood burning tool to create my slit. Probably not the easiest method, but it's all I could find at the time. You could also use a small chisel or a knife depending on how hard or soft your material used for the base is. Once I had my slit cut out, I'm just taking my Starbond super glue. I love this stuff. I have it linked in my description box. And then with the accelerator, I'm just going to hold it in place until it dries. Now I'm just taking some burlap to cover up the base and kind of hide where we have everything glued together. And then I'm going to hot glue it in place. My camera battery died, but you get the idea. I just basically wrapped it like a present using my hot glue. Then I'm going to glue my little reindeer down in place. I put him right on the very edge of the left side of my wood base. And then I'm going to take these floral picks that I got from Walmart in the 98-cent section. I love their Christmas floral picks. They have the best quality and they are so affordable. But I'm going to take out the berries and that additional little greenery flocked piece. I am going to use the additional greenery part, but not the berries at all. Then I'm just taking some floral wire and I'm going to wrap it around the wreath ring, holding my picks in place. And lastly, I am just adding in these macrame snowflakes that I made. I did not show them in this video, but stay tuned until next week because I have a whole macrame ornament video coming up. Today, I have teamed up with these lovely ladies, Bree from Bree's Arts and our host, Yelena from Blondie Next Door, to bring you some awesome Christmas decor inspiration. If you love neutral, high-end home decor on a budget as much as I do, you're going to love these ladies as well, but I'm sure you already know who they are. In case you don't, check out my description box for the playlist with their videos, and let's get back to it. For this project, I am using one of the medium-sized rings. I forgot to mention in the first project, I used the largest size for that one, but I'm taking some jute twine. This is the Dollar Tree twine, so it's the really thin stuff. You could use the thicker twine if you wanted to. I tested that one, didn't really like the look of it. It was a little bit too thick for this project. But I just hot glued the end down around itself around the ring, and then I'm going to wrap it around the center several times. Once I'm happy with the amount of twine I have, I just hot glued it down, cut off the end, and then I'm taking a lighter to singe off all of those little frayed bits on the jute twine. If you're not comfortable with this step, do not do it. It is not necessary. If you like that more rustic look, I would leave it just how it is. Next, I cut out the word winter with my Cricut, and I'm going to place them onto these 18mm beads. And I did not think when doing this step, you guys, I put them on the wrong way. The holes for the beads should have been sideways instead of up and down.
Oh my god, I'm so dumb.
But I decided to string them along my jute cord before fixing them, and I just added a little dab of hot glue to the end of my jute twine before stringing it through my beads. It makes it a lot easier that way because they are kind of rough through the center and sometimes your string can get stuck. So once I had all of my beads strung up on the jute twine, then I fixed my stickers and made them face the correct direction, and then I added a little dab of hot glue in between each bead as well so that they would stay in place and not move around. Then I just hot glued my jute twine with my winter beads down in place, and then I'm taking some various picks that I just have lying around and I am weaving them through the jute twine until I am happy with the look. And that was it for this one. Super simple and so beautiful and modern. I just love it. For this project, I am taking a medium and then a large wreath ring, and I'm going to glue them together where the edges touch using my Starbond super glue. Hot glue is not going to work here. It does not stick to metal. You could also use E6000, but then you'd have to wait for that to dry. Gluing the sides is also going to help with this next step. I'm going to be taking this chenille yarn. I believe I got this from the Dollar Tree, but I really can't remember. And we're going to use this to start wrapping it around the rings. And that's why you want to glue those two ends together. Otherwise, your rings are just going to start moving around with you as you start wrapping the yarn. I'm going to wrap my yarn all the way around the rings, kind of forming a moon or crescent shape. And I really did not need to use much hot glue here. I used it at the very beginning to tack the yarn down to the metal rings. And then as I started going down the second side, I needed to use a little bit more glue more frequently than I did going up on the first side. And I think that was just because of gravity and wanting to pull it down. Next, I'm taking this Merry MDF sign that I got from the Dollar Tree. I got this last year, but they are carrying these again this year as well. And I'm taking my Fawn Waverly chalk paint. This is my favorite color right now. I have been using it on so many projects, but I'm going to give this Merry sign one coat of the fawn colored paint. And then I'm going to take my black chalk paint and I'm going to paint all the way around the border of the Merry sign. So this part is definitely time consuming, but I think details like this really elevate your projects, making them look more like they were purchased in the store, which is really what I'm always trying to achieve in my DIY projects. I also found that doing the inner portion of the words, it was helpful to come from the back and then fill it in that way, so I wasn't worrying about getting the black chalk paint on the front of my word and then having to go back and try and cover that up with it being so dark. I thought it was still missing a little bit of detail, so taking this embossing tool, I also picked this up from the Dollar Tree, and then the color Warm Buff, which is an apple barrel acrylic paint, and I'm just adding some stitching marks all the way around the outside and then also the inside little portions of my letters. And I think this was the perfect finishing detail for this word. Next, I just hot glued my MDF sign down on top of the yarn, and that worked fine. This isn't very heavy, so the hot glue works for this part. And then I'm just taking some greenery pine that I have. I actually got this on a garland from Hobby Lobby, 50% off. I absolutely love the realistic look of it. And then I took these mini pine cones that I also got from Hobby Lobby, added them in sporadically, and that was it for this one. I absolutely love the way this turned out. I can't pick a favorite today. I love all of these so much. They are very in line with my style, but let me know, what do you think? For this project, I cut 2 strands of 4mm macrame cord at 12 feet each. I had a lot of cord left over. This was the second time I did this one. The first time I ran out of macrame, which is the worst thing when doing these kinds of projects. I think 9 feet would be good, but 12 definitely worked out for me. So you want to start out with a lark's head knot, which is where you fold your cord in half, put the center of the fold under your ring, and pull the ends of the cord through the loop. And we're going to do that 2 times. Next, we'll be creating square knots, and that's the only knot used to make this tree. So to make a square knot, you use the 2 outer strands, leaving the center 2 strands stationary. And we're going to start with a 4. You're going to make a 4 with the string on your left and put the right string over top of the straight line from the 4. Take the end of your right cord under and behind the stationary center strands and up through the hole of your 4, and then pull that tight. This is 1/2 of the knot. Next, you repeat this going the opposite direction. So take the outer right strand and create a backwards 4 with the outer left strand over top of the straight horizontal line. Take the end of the left strand behind the stationary strands and through the center of your backwards 4. This time we do not want to pull it completely tight, and this is what will start to create the loops for the tree. So each knot we do, we're going to leave a little loop slightly longer than the one before. Hopefully that makes sense, but you'll see it as it goes. So moving on, we will create another 4, repeating the first half of the square knot, pulling it tight to hold the loose half of the square knot in place. Now going on to the second loop of the tree, you want to create the second half of the square knot using the backwards 4. And I kind of squish the strings together to see how long I want this loop to be before starting the next knot that's going to hold it in place. Then you're just going to repeat this process, so I'm going to let it play all the way through in case this is something you want to recreate, or feel free to skip through to see the final result. But if you're enjoying this video, I hope you will like and subscribe. That really helps my channel to grow. After you have your macrame tree as long as you want it, I left a little bit of space at the bottom to act as like the trunk of the tree. And then I'm going to take my remaining 4 strands of macrame cord and we're going to place them underneath of the ring. Now we're going to tie off a knot on the bottom of the ring so that we can make sure the tree is going to stay in place. The way you're going to do this, we're going to take any of your strands, or you're going to do all 4 of them the same exact way. So you're going to start by looping your strand to the left side of itself. So up around the ring to the left side, pull that through. So you're just making a loop, and then you're going to do the same thing looping it onto the right side. However, on this time, when you pull it through the ring, you want to pull it through the loop that you created underneath. So I hope that makes sense. I know explaining macrame can be very difficult, but you can see what I'm doing as well. I will show you a couple of times. Next, we're going to add a wrap portion to the bottom of the macrame hanging. This part is not necessary. You could just end it here, comb out your macrame cords, and be done with it. I like to add that finishing detail of the wrap at the end and then have my fringe. So we need a 5th strand to do this, and I just cut off a portion of one of my longer strands left over rather than cutting out a new piece and wasting it. And you want to tuck it underneath of your 4 strands so that that's in the back of your wrap. And then you're going to create a loop. So just making sure that your loop is longer than the wrap portion that you want. And then we're just going to take that string and wrap it all the way around our 4 cords and then also that loop that we just created. You want to make sure the loop is inside of your wrap. Then you're just going to wrap the cord as many times as you want, as long as you want your wrapped section to be. And to finish it off, you're going to take the end of the cord you are wrapping with and you're going to put it through the loop that we created in the beginning. And then pull both ends. So you want to make sure the end where you started is sticking out above your wrap. And then you're going to pull both ends, and that is going to create a knot and also conceal your knot inside of the wrap. Then you're going to cut off your strands to make your fringe as long as you want it. Comb it out. I'm just using a little hair comb here to comb out the strings, and then I'm taking my flat iron to straighten them out. And lastly, I'm just going to take this decoupage glue. I am using this to hold my strands in place like the branches of my tree because they were getting a little bit twisted and not staying together. So this is just going to ensure that my tree is going to stay in the exact shape that I want it to stay in. And that was it for this one. I know this was a long project. I appreciate you sticking with me, but what do you think of the final result? For this project, we are using the last ring, which is the small size, and I'm taking this chicken wire that I got from Michael's and just cutting it down so that it is going to fit around the outside of my ring. And then I'm taking my Starbond super glue because I want to attach that chicken wire to my ring, and I place this wax paper underneath of the chicken wire. That way my glue is not going to adhere to my table and ruin my work surface. Once I have the chicken wire glued down, I am just taking my wire cutters again and I flipped my ring over so that the chicken wire is facing up, and that's going to give me a nice close cut right up against the ring. Next, I'm going to take my fawn colored Waverly chalk paint and I'm painting one of these wood planks that you can find at the Dollar Tree. They come in a 6-pack. I gave this 2 coats of paint on the front and the back. Then I'm taking this crocodile tool. This is the first time I have used this and I love it. It punches holes in your material so easily. I punched a hole on both sides and then also one in the center because this is going to be a little shelf on our wreath ring. Then I added some grommets on the inside of the holes just to make them look a little bit more finished. Next, I'm taking some zip ties, and this is what I'm going to use to attach my little shelf to the chicken wire and the wreath ring. You probably could just glue this on. I'm not placing anything heavy on top of it. It is just purely decorative, but I thought the zip ties helped add a little bit more stability. Once I had my shelf in place where I wanted it and my zip ties added, I just cut off the excess, and then I did take my Starbond super glue again, added a little bit on the edges just to make sure this board is going to stay in place exactly where I want my shelf to be. Styled it very minimalistically, and that was it for this one. I love the way this one turned out as well. That is it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let me know in the comments which one of these 5 wreath ring Dollar Tree DIY projects was your favorite, and I'll see you in the next one.